Good evening, and welcome to The Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy, broadcasting to you from FEMA Region 5, deep in the bowels of the United Police State of America. Today is October 24th, 2014, and I'm going to start off by just stating that we are under a concerted attack from several different directions. You have the terrorist, the war on terrorists, the terrorist attacks, and now we have the viral attack. Now, both of these attack programs that have been put in place have been planned for a very long time and use a strategy to overwhelm the American public and the people of the world with huge amounts of information. This is one way that you could hide information, by putting out so much information that it's almost impossible, or not impossible, but it's more difficult to figure out what's going on. You get a lot of conflicting information, they know this, lawyers do this. This is a lawyer's trick. It's like, let's say someone uses the Freedom of Information Act, or just requests information, and the people who have the information don't want to give that information out. So what do? Instead of refusing to give you the information, they give you way too much information. In other words, they say, oh, you're looking for this particular information? Here, boom. And they put, 20,000 pages on your desk. Here it is. I don't know exactly where it is, but and it's all scattered through there, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to try to get to it. So this is what the alternative news media has to do, is search through all kinds of reports, videotapes, interviews, and you pick up little pieces, and then you start putting these pieces together. And thousands of people around the world are doing this. And the people, the mainstream media, the captured media, the owned, the bought, the sold out media that is owned by the major corporations, 4 or 5 globalist, intercontinental, connected giant corporations own all the mainstream media now, and it will probably go down to 4, and then 3, and then 2, and eventually someday be just one. Just one company will own all the mainstream media, and they must shut down the alternative media, because more and more the alternative media is also getting coordinated, and although they're very independent, and new people are joining all the time, young people who are not getting any money for what they're doing. They're not getting paid at all, and they're doing it because they're curious, and they want to find out what's going on in the world. They're very interested, and they feel a need to hear the entire story. So what's going on with the Ebola virus, for instance? So we got the Ebola, we got terrorism, we got a bunch of other things going on. I'm focusing on those today because we just had this big event a couple days ago in Canada, in Ottawa, the capital of Canada, which is changing radically and already has changed that country's legal system to allow a whole new level of surveillance and police state to take in as a direct result of the supposed shooter in the Parliament building of Canada. So let's look at that first. So is Ebola, how many people is Ebola killing? How many are they, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? We're getting a barrage. But here's what President Obama said about it just recently. Here's a clip, a short clip.
And our hearts still go out to his family, as well as the 2 nurses that were infected. In fact, what we're seeing is that the public health infrastructure and systems that we are now putting in place across the board around the country should give the American people confidence that we're going to be in a position to deal with any additional cases of Ebola that might crop up without it turning into an outbreak. If there is a silver lining in all the attention that the Ebola situation's received over the last several weeks, it's a reminder of how important our public health systems are. And in many ways, what this has done is elevated that importance. There may come a time, sometime in the future, where we are dealing with an airborne disease that is much easier to catch and is deadly. And in some ways, this has created a trial run for federal, state, and local public health officials and healthcare providers, as well as the American people, to understand the nature of that and why it's so important that we're continually building out our public health systems, but we're also practicing them and keeping them in tip-top shape and investing in them.
Okay, so he's speaking about the Ebola epidemic and our reaction to it, and he mentions, interestingly, that this could be a drill. Yes, he actually uses that term, that it might be just a practice run for a much more dangerous airborne pathogen virus pandemic, much more deadly. In other words, he's sort of priming the pump. He's just throwing that out there like he's speculating. Well, he just, he thinks it might, you never know. It might be good. It might be good that this is happening because this will prepare people for what is coming. He calls it a silver lining. And what is this telling the American people? This is telling the American people that a much more dangerous virus pathogen, airborne, truly airborne, is coming. So we should remember this, and this clip is historic and should be like the warning of President Eisenhower against the military-industrial complex, although that was in a much more formal setting, and this is far more sinister than that, because I think that Eisenhower's warning was a genuine warning, whereas this is more of a, it's not a warning, it's a hint, it's a psyop, it's a little preparation to get people psychologically prepared to expect that this is something that we just have to expect, that it's coming down the road, and so therefore maybe it's good that we have this small outbreak now, by comparison, small, and so, well, where this is going to go and how many Americans are going to end up getting infected and die, that's an open question. One thing we can say for sure is that there are secret labs called BLS. What are they called? They're called, BSL-4 bioweapons labs. And these are situated around the world. This is where they work on pathogens, and specifically pathogens like bubonic plague, smallpox, things like Ebola, the most dangerous pathogens in the world, and they are being weaponized in these BSL-4. BSL means biosafety level, and which means, and 4 is the highest, the most dangerous level. And we have I looked online about this, and there is one in Gabon, which is in Africa, but I saw an interview with a guy who seemed to know what he was talking about and said there was a lot more of those BSL labs in West Africa. And the list that I saw of all the labs around the world said this is not a complete list. So we know, of course, that this has been acknowledged that this strain of the Ebola virus actually appeared in West Africa, in a city, in a hospital in a city, whereas all the others before that have appeared in rural areas. And it's usually because of local people, very poor, who go out and they get bush meat, what they call bush meat, which would mean maybe a chimpanzee or gorilla or some other primate, and they do carry, this is essentially a primate disease, and they do carry Ebola, and so therefore maybe they didn't cook it enough, and then they get Ebola, and so you get an outbreak. Well, this is a little bit different. And whether or not it's the same strain we're used to, people are still trying to figure this out. Is it more deadly? Is it less deadly than the strain of Ebola that we usually see? Has it been combined with something like the flu virus to make a bioweapon? We're not sure about that, but a lot of people are looking into this, so we'll find out more as the days and weeks come along. But it's looking very much like another bioweapon attack against the people of the United States. One thing we do know, and I saw an interview with a guy from South Africa, a very high-level medical guy, who gave this interview, and maybe next week I'll show the interview on the show. But there's so much to show. I mean, I could fill up the whole hour with these clips. But basically what he said was that, yes, in the 1980s, South Africa worked on weaponizing Ebola because we have a, quote, population problem. And this was ethnic, it was race, ethnic targeted, it was race specific, and it was, in other words, targeted against black people. And there was another country that was also very interested that also had a problem, and it may very well have been Israel, I don't know, but they were very close with South Africa and having a similar kind of apartheid system. And they also had a population problem that they want to deal with. But many, many people, and these are scientists around the world, believe that the problem, the root problem on planet Earth is too many people. And so these are solutions to too many people. Okay, enough said on that. So I want to look at this terrorist act, the supposed terrorist act that happened a couple days ago and has had already a tremendous effect, because on the very day after the man was shot up the Parliament building, killed a soldier at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and then was killed himself, supposedly, that there was a reading of a new bill which would have drastically increased the surveillance state, the police state in Canada. And I just heard this on NPR just this morning, people saying that there is a very strong libertarian streak among the Canadian people. But after this attack on the very heart of the government in Ottawa, it's very likely that it will most certainly, the bill will most certainly pass, and it will go through, and it will become law. And then, in fact, that is exactly what happened, and that just happened, I think, today. So within a matter of, but the commentators on NPR made no connection that it might have been more than a coincidence that this young man shot up the place and then was killed himself, and was a Muslim who was a Canadian who had been radicalized. Well, there's all kinds of ways to get people to assassinate people, to shoot up places, to do all kinds of things. Believe me, those techniques are out there, and they involve brainwashing, hypnotizing, drugs. They have the techniques down. They've been working on this for 50 years at least to make a shooter out of an ordinary, maybe weak-minded, kind of unbalanced person. You only have to look at somebody like Sirhan Sirhan, very sort of simple-minded, almost simple-minded young man, susceptible to hypnosis, who went in, they got him to go in and take some shots at the presidential candidate Bobby Kennedy back in 1968, and is still in jail to this very day and has no memory whatsoever of being the shooter. And we know, of course, that Robert Kennedy was not shot from the front, but was shot at close range right here in the back of his head by a small caliber pistol. The exact same bullet that Sirhan Sirhan was shooting. Doesn't mean it was the same actual gun, but it was the same make and model of gun. So, and they've pretty much identified, don't remember his name now, but the guy who actually shot Robert Kennedy, who was standing behind him, who was a security guard, and had only been a security guard for a few months and then dropped out right after that, very soon after that. So anyway, all right, let's look at Canada's situation. Let's look at our next very interesting and informative clip that we have lined up.
This is our line. This is for old guys, grandmothers, grandfathers. This is our line. Come on. It's our line. Bugger off to your line. This is our line. Get out of here. Take your mask off. Hey. I'm all off, brother. Take your mask off. No. Put the rock down, man. Put the rock down. Hey. Put the rock down. This is our line. You fucking cops, get out of town. Cops out of town. Hey, Steve. Hey. Leave these guys alone. That's our line. You're fucking cops. It's our line! It's our line! Party street! No. Hey, let's not come here! He's on They're trying to fool us. Yeah, we know. They're trying to fool us. They want us to be aggressive with them. They want us to be. You guys never comes will let people in problems like this. They all just interrupt. C'est les avantages provocateurs de gros. Exactement. No. It's our line. It's our line. I think that's what they're saying. Put the rock down. Même la police, ça, vous êtes pas mal de chicken shit. Hey, take your mask off. Take your mask off. You're a fucking cop, the three of you. Go on, it's our line. It's a peaceful demonstration. These three guys are cops, everybody. Put the rock down, cop. Police, come on, let's see your face. Come on. Let's see your face. It's not gonna help. Come on, cop. And then go another way. They won't beat them. They're gonna try to arrest them. Vive la police! This is our line! And we want the cops out of there! Provocateurs.
So we're protecting the We're protecting the integrity of the line.
I still want my pride back. Let's call now, man. They got their cops back. Good job.
They were moving in because the flag block was moving.
Yeah, there was that guy over there. What's the person taking away? What was that about? Did somebody get injured?
No, the three cops tried to, they had rocks and they were about to start a riot. Suck everybody in, and these kids spotted them. I stepped in front of them and stopped them. Sent some provocateurs in to try and crash the line. We stopped them, asked them to take their masks off. They're carrying big boulders. They were not, anyone that's here.
They're not. They were
Provocateurs with boulders. They wanted to create a riot.
They weren't.
They're policemen. We asked them to take their mask off. They're cops.
And they were provoking. They were so it would be an excuse for the police to move in, and we don't want that. So we're not protecting the police. We're stopping.
We got some peaceful protesters down there. We got to protect.
They're back in there. They crossed back into the police line.
They're trying to create a riot so that they can suck us all in to get beat up.
They're people off.
How do you know? How do you know?
I stopped him, looked him in his eye, and said, "You're a cop, aren't you?" And his eyes just glazed right up. I tried to take his mask off. We took it off. We got pictures. They're provocateurs. We got a peaceful group of young brothers down there, and we're going to ensure that these guys don't beat them up. That's our job. This is our line, and we're going to protect them. We're not letting some goon with a club come in and start a riot.
Okay, that clip, as you saw, was taken in 2007 in Quebec, Canada, and that elderly gentleman who actually spotted these three undercover police officers was a union leader and obviously a very smart guy, and he recognized that they were actually trying to start a riot. He says, "Drop the rock, put the rock down, show us your faces, you're cops. What are you doing here? You know, this is a peaceful protest. Get away from us. This is our protest. Go have your own protest," and on and on and on. And they eventually just enter the police line, which is right there, and then they're dropped to they get on the ground. They have their hands handcuffed behind their backs, and they are led off. Now, there were 4 people at that protest who were arrested, but those 3 gentlemen were not arrested. They were not part of the 4 that were arrested at that protest, it turned out later. And there was a photograph taken. There were a lot of photographs taken. Here's the photograph right here. This was right after they were dropped on the ground. You saw when they went down, and people with sharp eyes have noticed when this picture was taken that the bottom of the combat boots of the shoes were identical that the police were wearing and the protesters were wearing. And you can see the little yellow oval on the bottom of the police shoe of that police officer on the left side, and he has it in a red circle and blown up. Then you can see a couple of examples of protester shoes with the red circle on the bottom of the shoe. And the identical, if you look closely, you can see the identical corrugation at the bottom of those heavy-duty black combat style boots. And they're identical, the same color, everything. One guy it looks like one of the protesters, the so-called protesters, the undercover cops, looks like he tried to disguise his shoe with some duct tape and maybe a little paint or something, but underneath on the bottom you can tell it's the exact same shoe. What are the chances of that happening? Well, the fact is that this photograph and other photographs started a firestorm of protest and outrage in Canada at that time, and the police a few days later were forced to admit that yes, those 3 men were undercover agents, and they were definitely trying to start violence, and they were going to use that rock or whatever to break a window or do whatever. And this would give what you might ask, well, why would they want to do that? Well, there's only one answer to that question, and that is that this gives the police the pretext to wade into that crowd and start cracking heads and start making arrests, and they could say, well, they were violent thugs. And this is, and it discredits the whole effort of the protesters to say that they're peaceful with their signs, protesting the actions of the government, which is what they were doing. And of course, this is nothing new. This is nothing new for Canadian police or American police or police around the world. And it's interesting, they were dressed in black, you noticed that. There were other young men dressed in black. And the name of that group is the Black Bloc. And they appear in protest after protest after protest. In the late 90s, they showed in the big battle at Seattle, a big protest that happened there, giant thing. They were very much in there, busting things up, and that was shown also, that they were being paid by the U.S. government and by us, the taxpayers, to discredit the anti-war movement and the anti-globalization movement. That's what that Seattle thing was all about. And make the protesters look really bad. And of course, ordinary people watching TV don't know, and they go, wow. You know, they're breaking windows, they're burning cars. Yeah, speaking of burning cars, there's, in 2010, in the G20 big meeting that they had in Toronto, you had the Black Bloc, same guys, busting windows, and they burned a police car, and they were jumping up on top, up and down on that police car and breaking the roof in and the windows and just trashed that car. For an hour and a half, they were unmolested by the police as they ran rampant through downtown Toronto. And if you look at the still photographs and the videotapes, they're wearing the same kind of really heavy black boots, or shoes, actually. They're actually shoes that the police wear, identical. They were probably, almost certainly, agents, undercover police officers, providing the violence that the news media requires and the government requires and the police require in order to deal with the protesters in the way that they see fit. Remember, as many people have said, and I've said on this show many times, the best kind of enemy is the enemy you own, that you control, and even that you create. And if you have no enemy, oftentimes it's essential that you create an enemy, because you need an enemy in order to survive. The more tyrannical you are, the more of a police state you are, the more of a criminal organization you are, the more you need an enemy to fight against and to scare the people and to make them rally around you and to make them believe that only you can protect them from the evil enemy, the boogeyman, whatever his name, the latest name that you want to call him. But over and over and over, this is one of the major reasons why we do not have peace on this planet. So we've got this is from a couple of clips now that I have from the most recent terrorist attack in Canada. So we've shown what the police are capable of doing in Canada. So let's look at some of the reactions of the police to this very serious shooter incident that happened in downtown Ottawa at the Parliament buildings. Okay, so let's get, we've got it right here. So you see the police officers right there on your left. We'll look at them, and they're very serious. They've got a shooter in the building. He's already killed one person. Now, the cop notices that he's being filmed. He puts the gun down. He's sort of grinning a little bit. Now watch what he does. This is an ongoing shooter situation here. He's joking and laughing with someone off camera. This is very funny to him. The guy behind him, or that might be a woman behind him, police officer with the sunglasses on, they think this is hilarious. They're laughing. The guy who put this on YouTube is repeating it. There it is. You see? In other words, he does not feel threatened. He does not feel his life is in danger at all. And the whole thing is hilarious to him, and the woman behind him too. Okay, so what does that tell you? We got another example of this. It's a longer clip. We'll put that on and show you. We have not one, but two clips of amused police officers, and this is just from a couple of days ago, at this very serious shooting, which has transformed all of Canada in the twinkling of an eye. It has now been given enormous surveillance powers. Let's look at this next clip. This is from InfoWars.
Joe Biggs with Infowars.com. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about what's going on in Canada right now. One Canadian soldier has been killed, and also a gunman has been killed. Right now, we're still told that there are shooters out there, and there is an active investigation still going on into what has happened. But, I was watching Fox News earlier, and they had a live feed up, and one of the things I caught the anchor on the side of the road say is that the police are coming out saying, hey, don't post videos or photos of the ongoing incident as they happen, just to ensure safety of responders and the public. We heard that same thing happen when I was in Ferguson. Myself, Jakar Jackson, and Josh Owens, we heard the police come over there say, no, don't film any of this stuff, turn off your equipment, stop recording. And this whole safety thing, I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, you have the right to go out there and update things like that. That's how you get really good reporting done, to find out what's going on, because the police always want to try to hide stuff. Here's something interesting we caught while watching local Canadian TV. Now, as you can see right here, you got the squad car, you got two police officers lined up, and what's going to happen is they're going to sit here and then take off at a dead sprint and run. You can see they have this guy has a 9mm in his hand. So does this gentleman. These two guys right here, he's got a M4 and a handgun. But this is what we noticed right here. These guys come right over here. They slow down once they get out of the main view of the cameras, and they go off to the side, and you can see them laughing and smiling and joking. Look at them. They're just like laughing. So the police are laughing and joking, and this kind of leads up to the fact whether or not is this a false flag. We're not saying that it is, but that's pretty odd, wouldn't you say? I mean, to see these police officers are in front of the main news crew, they're running at a dead sprint like there's something crazy going on, but as soon as they get out of view, off to the side, and they think no one's watching, they're laughing and kind of joking and looking around to see what's going on. So that's just something to think about and look at.
The Senate Security and the House of Commons.
Here you have another example of police officers laughing at what is reported to be an extremely serious situation of an active shooter in the Parliament building in Ottawa, in Canada. And you can see them, they're laughing and joking, they're relaxed, they believe that they're off camera, and this is telling. It's these kind of little details that build up, not just that alone, but others. And then you have other incidents that take place over the years, and really this is a pattern that we've seen for a very, very long time that begins to get more and more credence, and it takes on the it reaches a level where you can no longer believe that what you're seeing and the reports that we're hearing are absolute truth. In fact, maybe the complete opposite, that we're directly being lied to on a daily basis by the mainstream media about what is going on in the world. We have to always take this, take what they say with way more than a grain of salt. How about an 80-pound bag of salt? We need to take that with. So let's be skeptical. Let's always search for what's really going on. It is, in the words from the X-Files, the truth is out there, and it's really right in our face. And once we get an eye and get an understanding, a certain level of understanding, then you can pick out these anomalies a lot more easily. And of course, there's people out there who are going to post them for you. This is why the government wants and needs to control the internet very much. It's the only, for most people, it's the only lifeline that they have that people have to get the real story out. What we're seeing is a gradual buildup of, in the Western societies, of a police state very much like the GDR in East Germany or the Soviet Union or the former, or even in China, let's say. Whereas in the former Soviet Union and Russia and these type of places, you see a movement in the opposite direction. And so it's almost like the whole balances are turning, so that the West had its period of openness and freedom and transparency, and the East had its period of repression and the opacity and the police state. And now it's all reversing. And I don't know if that's just happening by accident or if it's a deliberate part of the engineering of society to eventually reduce sovereignty of nations to the point through this destabilizing of one area, then a destabilizing of another area, to the point where people are just fed up and they want that one world governance because they cannot find peace, they cannot find that pursuit of happiness that was promised to them by the Declaration of Independence. They cannot find financial stability, stability in their family. We have a situation now in the country where we're being overrun by the drugs, hardcore drugs like heroin, and we know that the government and the CIA, which is really above the level now of the government. The CIA is such an enormous organization that especially when coupled with its sister organizations, supposedly intelligence gathering organizations, secret organizations around the world, like the ISI and the British intelligence agencies, the French, the German, etc., the Mossad, etc., then when they work together, you have an extremely powerful planetary secret organization which can more or less do whatever it wants, and it's above the law, and it has its assassins running around, taking care of business, making sure that the secrecy is kept secret. So, but there's always a counterbalance to this. You have the people who are very much concerned with getting the truth out there. The truth is a wonderful thing. It makes you feel good when you hear it. I mean, a lot of times people, when they hear it, they know it. They know that's true. That just feels right. There's an intuitive response from a very deep level inside of a human being. It's not depressing. It's invigorating. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy. You feel more respect for yourself, and you get helped by it. The people that I know who are into learning about the truth, they tend to do very well in life. They seem to, they're more prosperous. They have the facts, an understanding of the facts and the way things work to, in other words, to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that people run into. Those people who are very much aware and keep their eye on the ball about what's going on in the world in all levels, political, moral, philosophical, financial, they are awake and aware enough to do things like avoid buying a house at a very inflated house, a very inflated price in 2007, let's say, or 2008, at the very peak of the housing bubble, and then being crushed and destroyed financially with an underwater mortgage. And why would people fall into that? Because they don't see through the veil. They don't look behind the curtain. They don't see the man operating the machinery behind the curtain. They just believe the illusion that's being presented to them, and they get duped. They get pulled into the narrative that's being created, the reality, the sense of reality that's being created for them. And then they get the rug pulled out from under them when the time is right. And so they've put themselves, not through any fault of their own, but just by not being assiduous enough, by not studying, by not being looking at things from all perspectives, not just their own various perspective. Listen to other people's point of view. I didn't used to do that myself. I was very much a liberal. I was raised by essentially socialists, very left-wing, and I never looked at anybody who had any other point of view. But when I did, because of my frustration with what I was hearing from the left, and I saw that, there is another valid point of view. There's another way of looking at this. Nobody is 100% right on either the left or right. And eventually I came to the realization that what is this labeling of left and right? None of this has really any meaning. Maybe it never really even had any meaning in the first place. It's all part of the show, folks, the left and right paradigm. It's playing one side off to the other. Good guys and bad guys, cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians. There's really nothing different about it. And as I've mentioned before on the show, the police and the military use the good guy, bad guy paradigm all the time. And I hear respected journalists and journalists who should know better, really, on NPR and other respected news outlets, using the metaphor of the bad guys and good guys. And it always rubs me the wrong way now, because everybody is a human being. We're all human beings. No one is 100% bad. And people have their reasons. This guy who was killed in Ottawa, we don't know much about him. He was a Canadian citizen, but we don't even know if he was actually... One thing we have to look at is, was he really killed, or did he even exist? Now the media, and with the special effects machinery, the computer-generated images that can be created, they now have the ability to literally create a person out of nothing. And then they can make a photograph, which is a composite photograph. They can change that look of that person. They can make one person look like another person. And then they can kill off that person. And especially, they can kill him off, and that makes him just go away in people's consciousness. They stop investigating. The guy's dead. But did he ever exist in the first place? This is the example of this that I would like to point out is Adam Lanza. Adam Lanza was the mentally deficient, like 97-pound weakling teenager, he might have been 20 or 21, who we are told killed, but didn't wound anyone in that shooting at Newtown. And there's some really strong evidence out there that maybe I should get into sometime, that Adam Lanza never even existed. His brother, his so-called brother, who's still alive, is a real person. But I've actually seen a photograph of Adam Lanza and his brother side by side. And it's a profile, and there's two little spots on their cheeks. They're like two little scars or something, and they are identical. And you might say, well, but they look different. They're not the same person, but they look very similar. But then you might say, well, they're brothers. They're going to look very similar. And Adam Lanza looks definitely younger than his brother, very similar in appearance. But why couldn't the photograph of the older brother and the younger brother just be the same person? But it's just the same guy, but several years younger. That's just an example. No, two brothers could certainly look similar, but the chances that they would have two identical marks on their cheek is highly unlikely. And this is the kind of thing that people need to look for, because this is the kind of mistakes that people who are trying to bring off these scams make. Just like the government of Canada and the undercover agents didn't change their shoes. They tried to change the appearance of their shoes, but they didn't get underneath the shoes and change the signature of the corrugation of the rubber on the soles of their boots. And that was enough. With all the other evidence all thrown in together, and that was really the kicker right there. And this is the type of thing, these are the small things that add up to really big things. And then you also have the huge things that we see, the major in-your-face events that are so mind-boggling that people simply can't get their brain around the notion or the accusation that the governments themselves did this. And we have to look no further than who are the people in government? What kind of people are they? And what have governments done in the past? And if you look at the history of this planet, and you look at the history of the 20th century and the centuries before that, you will see that governments have killed more people and their own people than any other organizations by far on the planet. So there's really nothing new about this. In order to stay in power, governments must kill. They must oppress their own people. They must imprison. They must torture in order to, because otherwise people are not afraid of them. And if they don't like them, they will overpower them, overwhelm them, and throw them out. Sometimes violently, sometimes not so violently. So you can see why governments do this. Governments have a high percentage of psychopaths, of sociopaths in their ranks. That's because the sociopath/psychopath has an obsession with getting power and loves to control people and throw it around and act like a big man. And so they do. And some people don't understand that it doesn't have to be that way. They feel like that's the only way it could be. I was talking to a psychologist about this very thing, and I said, I'm looking at this book called The Sociopath Next Door. It's amazing. And she said, yeah, I heard of the book. I know about sociopaths. And I said, yeah, now they're saying that 1 in 25 people are sociopaths, and that the higher you go in government and business and so on, military, the larger the percentage of sociopaths gets. She says, yes, that's true. But we need sociopaths. And I was just so stunned, I didn't know what to say. We need them because they're the people, she says, who don't have the feelings and don't have the conscience, they don't have a conscience, and they don't feel any shame or guilt, and we need them. We need them in places of power to do the dirty work, to make the decisions that are required. And I don't know who told her that or why she would believe that, but that's what she said. And I'm wondering, is this what she learned in school? Is this what they're teaching psychologists, that sociopaths are necessary to fill high-level positions in government? That is a truly scary thought. And I hope that not too many people believe that. But unfortunately, that's the way governments are trying to lead people. They're trying to lead them down that primrose path of deception to the point where people are so afraid that they feel like we've got to kill these people or else they will kill us. We've got to wipe out those people, and the only way to do it is we need to get boots on the ground. This is the catchphrase now. You know that the American people have realized, for the most part, they have realized that they were deceived, they were lied to. They were given false information in the first part of the 21st century, leading up to and including and during and after the invasion of Afghanistan, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Libya, now Syria, now Africa. They're tired of it. They're tired of war. But they think, well, why can't we have peace? Why can't we just back off? Why can't we just walk away? Look at our young men and women who are coming back. They're homeless. They're sick. They're mentally ill. They're physically ill. A whole generation. How many people were? How many lives, American, we have the Middle Eastern lives destroyed, ruined, damaged, traumatized. I mean, that's a whole other story. That's way more people. But just looking at it from the American side, we had maybe at least 1.5 million go through the process, the meat grinder of Afghanistan, Iraq. And then they come out and they think they're fine. Yeah, because they're tough guys, right? But then the nightmares start. They can't sleep. It comes back every night. Horrifying nightmares that wake them up. They can't sleep. So they start medicating. Maybe alcohol, maybe drugs, maybe both. They lose their job. They lose their relationship with their wife, their husband. They end up homeless. They end up committing suicide with their service pistol or something like that. And we've seen that over and over. More people in the military now committing suicide than the population at large. Many suicides not even claimed as suicides. They're trying to keep the numbers down. Women committing suicide when they're in the military. They're still in the military. They haven't even got out yet, and they're doing it. Men and women called back when they don't want to call back for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth tour and can't take it anymore and just blow their brains out over and over and over and over. So the trauma that they bring back to the United States destabilizes the family, destabilizes the society, costs society a tremendous amount of money. And why? And why? Because they're afraid that that the Iraqis are going to attack the United States. Because they're afraid that the Afghans are going to attack the United States. their excuses were the most flimsy lies and excuses that are humanly possible, yet people bought into it. Some people just thought it was cool. Yeah, go over and kill them, it's fun. That's why they even wanted to go over there. So, well, I've about run out of time, really. So that's all I have. So you have a great weekend and sleep well.